Wiki sites are a great way to maintain procedures and technical guidance. They are easy to search, easy to update, and easy to find or access as opposed to a long drawn out Word document stuffed somewhere on a file share. In IT, where technology and software changes on a nearly daily basis, it's critical to allow techs to make small adjustments to some of the procedures, add their own notes and tips, and communicate issues with others. In this video, we will learn how to install MediaWiki with BlueSpice on a Windows Server 2012 virtual machine and enable domain authentication. BlueSpice is a feature-rich add-on to MediaWiki that makes the site more user-friendly and gives it a sleeker feel. It allows the user to edit articles with a what you see is what you get interface similar to Microsoft Word, and allows easier updates of photos and documents. This video is meant to complement a written how-to available and the link in the description. We're going to start with the basic installation of Windows Server 2012 already joined to the domain, so I will revert this checkpoint and we will get started. Before beginning the installation of the Wiki server, I highly recommend downloading all the necessary and even optional software and getting it all compiled. Makes it a little bit easier later on. I'd also recommend going over to Windows Explorer, going to the View tab, and checking this file name extensions because you're going to need to see those in the future here. Another thing that will make your life a little bit easier is turning off the Internet Enhanced Security configuration. Just do that by going into the Server Manager, local server, in this little on hyperlink, and turning that off on both because we're going to be browsing this wiki server from the server itself to make sure it's all working. And also I'm going to create a shortcut to Internet Explorer because the Internet Explorer built into the Windows Start menu on server is touchpad friendly, not really server friendly. So finish up that. That's going to make life a little bit easier. You can even pin it to the start menu here, or the taskbar here. I'm also going to make life easier by installing Notepad++ directly on the server as well as WinRAR. Now for some prerequisites, I'm going to get Microsoft Visual C++ redistributable installed because that's going to be required by some of the applications we're going to be trying to run off this machine. And I'm also going to install Microsoft.NET Framework 4.52, but that version might be different depending on what version is currently out there by the time you see this video. This can take several minutes. Now we finished up that, and optionally you can install the Visual C++ Redistributed 2015 package, and that's going to be required later on when we install MySQL, if you want to install the MySQL Workbench, which will allow you to work on the database, but it's not really a requirement for this for the wiki server itself. I'm going to throw it on here just for the hell of it. Okay, now I'm ready to start working on getting the IIS installed. So I just go back to Server Manager. And I'll go to Manage, Add Roles and Features. I'm going to click Next, Next, Next. And under Server Roles, I'm going to scroll on down. Select Web Server IIS. Go to Add Features, Next. Don't worry about this window. And this is where we need to concentrate. We're looking for common HTTP features. And we're going to check mark HTTP redirection. We're also going to look for application development. Expand that out. And look for CGI. We're going to check that and install it as well. And the last thing we're looking for is web server security. and we're going to check Windows authentication. Click on next and go and install. And this too will take several minutes to complete. Alright, once that completes up, I want to open Internet Explorer here, and I'm going to navigate to localhost. Just make sure that I see a Internet or IIS splash page. And now we know that IIS is installed correctly, at least to a point. So next thing I'm going to tackle is installing and configuring PHP. In order to do that, I'm going to need to unzip this PHP. I'm just going to open with WinRAR because it's easier that way. I'm going to extract this to the desktop temporarily. We'll create a new folder here. OK. It should bring it up to the desktop. I'm going to open up the contents of that folder, select all, copy it, and I'm going to C drive, and I'm going under Program Files x86. Now you can install PHP directly under the C drive. However, if you have STIGs and host intrusion prevention and HBSS or anything like that, it may prevent that PHP from executing direct from the C drive. So I'll usually put it under one of the program folders. And I'm just going to name this folder, or create a new folder, and name it PHP. Enter, open it up, and insert all that. And it's going to prompt me for this, administrative privileges on this. Just to make things a little bit easier on me in the future, I'm going to go to the properties of this and adjust the security settings so I don't have to be an admin to make little changes while I'm getting this up and running in production. And I can go ahead or go back later on and change that. Now I'm going to go edit the PHP INI. In order to do that, I got to create the PHP INI, so I'll just copy this PHP INI-development and paste it in. Continue. And I'm going to change this file name to just php.ini. Yep. Yeah. Now I'll edit this in Notepad++ because that makes it a hell of a lot easier. And there's a couple things I need to uncomment within this code, and I'll just search and replace or remove the comment code, which is a semicolon in front of it, in order to do that. Keep the comment code there. So let's speed it up and make it happen. For the date time zone, I'm going to go ahead and make this America/New York because I'm in the Eastern time zone. But you can go ahead and look this up online and find out what's most appropriate for your time zone. Now that I got all that uncommented out and adjusted, I'm also going to need to make some other adjustments on some of the other variables in here, such as max execution time. I'm going to make that 120. I'm going to look for post max size. I'm going to make that more than 8 megabytes so I can basically upload stuff that is greater than 8 megabytes. I'm also going to adjust the upload max size, or max file size. I'm going to make this 120 megabyte. That's because I plan on uploading MP4s that could potentially be up to that size or more. Well, maybe not more, but And another thing I'm going to look for is session.save_path. And that's the one I'm looking for. Get that comment out of there. And I'm going to change this to be in my PHP directory, the temp directory under PHP. Insert that in there. And I'm also going to do the same for upload temp directory. Alright, now I'll go ahead and save this. Yes, this is what I was trying to get around from changing the permissions to allow users in that directory. Apparently it didn't work. Alright, so I go down here, and what I'm going to do is create a folder for the temp directory. Just new folder under PHP, call it TMP. I'm going to adjust permissions for this. Go to properties, security, edit. I'm going to add and change the location to the local computer here. Okay. Yeah, it might not be necessary all the time. And type in IUSR, and that's going to be the IIS service account. Okay. And I'm going to allow that service account to modify this folder and upload stuff to it, because it's going to use it as a temporary directory, hence the name TMP. Alright, next I'm going to go and install WinCache, which is a PHP plugin, so just open that in the zip file. Yeah, let's go with WinWare. And all I really need out of this bundle of software is the PHP WinCache, so I'll just copy this or extract it. Okay, and let me go back and copy it real quick. Probably would have been better to open it on WinZip. So copy this, and I'm going to copy it over to the program or the PHP directory that we have under Program Files 86, and the extensions directory. That's where I drop it. Continue on. Now somewhere in the PHP INI file that we're working on here, I'm going to drop in some stuff to enable that extensions, and usually I put it right around the extensions area. Just to make it somewhat organized. So I'll drop it right below that, and it just has a PHP WinCache in brackets, extension equals PHP_WinCache.dll. And I'll go and save this. And what I want to do now is verify that PHP is actually working, or at least PHP CGI. So I scroll down under the PHP directory and run php-cgi. It should come up with this prompt window and nothing displayed. If there's any errors with WinCache or anything else, it will either display the error or run real quick and close the window. And you got to resolve those errors before moving on. So good luck there. I can close that window now. I know PHP is installed correctly, or at least I think it is. And I can continue to configuring IIS to work with PHP. So I go back to Server Manager, IIS, and I'm right mouse clicking the server and go to IIS Manager. From here I'll hit this little drop down. Being that I'm only using this server for hosting the wiki itself, if I was hosting different websites on here, I'd go and do this next portion just for the website, but I'm going to do it for the server itself and make the default document index.php. So go ahead and open this default document, add, type in index.php. Okay, and if it ends up at the bottom, just move it up to the top by using these little up-down arrows here. But it's already at the top, so I don't got to worry about that. I'm going to click the server again, and next thing I'm going to do is add in a handler mapping to support fast CGI or that PHP application we just installed. So we'll go to handler mappings, add module mapping. I'm going to do star.php for this portion. Choose a fast CGI module for the module. We'll navigate over to the executable, which is under C drive, program files, PHP, and I'm looking for changes to exe and look for PHP CGI. And OK. And we're going to name this. Doesn't matter too much on the name, but we do want to keep it organized, so it's going to be PHP via fast CGI. OK. Yep. And it's in there for the entire server now. Now, just to be safe here, I'm going to go to eventually great Windows Server start buttons. Alright, look for CMD, right mouse click that, run it as administrator, yes, and then I'm going to do IIS reset, make sure all those settings take effect, and restarted successfully. Now, just to make my life a little bit easier in the future here, I'm going to go and navigate to my computer, C drive, inet pub, www root, and go to properties of that. We're going to adjust security settings, and hopefully this will actually work on this directory, because if not, it's going to be incredibly annoying. I'll go to modify for users, so we can modify that stuff without getting prompted every 2 seconds to modify it. Now, a real quick note here, by default, the default web page is going to be under inet pub www root. You may, in your environment, want to create an additional external hard drive, well, not external hard drive, but an additional drive specifically for this web page and all the data that's going to go into it. I'm not going to do that here because it's just outside of the scope of what I want to demonstrate, but that's probably the best practice. So if somebody uploads a bunch of movies to your wiki server, it doesn't clog up the C drive or the operating system drive and render your server, kaput. So carrying on, we're going to test out, make sure that everything installed correctly with PHP. So I'm going to create a new file or a new text document. We'll go ahead and rename this php info.php. Yeah, I want to change it, and we're going to go and open it with Notepad++, and I'm going to add in a little bit of PHP script just to display exactly how PHP is installed. So just insert that little line there. Alright, save it. And I'm going to go back to my local server, or localhost /php info.php. PHP looks like it installed correctly, so let me find WinCache just to make sure that actually worked out for us. And looks like that section is there as well, and everything's good. So next thing I need to do is run into MySQL and install that. So I'll go back to my downloads folder. And I got this MySQL installer community, and it's 300 megabyte file. There's another one out there that I haven't used, which is probably a fraction of that. But we want the full-blown edition, so 300 meg is about right. Go to run. Also, another caveat to this, with the current version of BlueSpice or MediaWiki, it's not really compatible with MySQL 8.0 or above because it uses a different type of character set, I guess, to write to the database that I haven't been able to figure out how to make 8.0 comply with. So make sure you're getting 5.7 or below. In the future, maybe MediaWiki 1.30 or above might work with newer version of MySQL, but not 100% sure. Let's take a couple minutes to configure. Alright, that took a couple minutes to unpack, so I'm going to accept these license terms. Go next. Choose server only as the installation type. Next. And turns out I failed to download 2013 redistributable and install, so I'll get that fixed on the checklist. And I'm going to ensure that I get the 64-bit edition. Allow. Oh jeez, Microsoft making life hard on me. Alright, I'll go run that. Install. Close it out. It should be good now. I might need to go back once. I wonder if I can reevaluate or I've got to run it again. We'll cancel out of this and start it over. Alright, now we can resume server only. Next. Yep. Execute. Another thing that could be potentially installed right now or after the fact is MySQL Workbench, which will allow you to see the actual data that the wiki server is putting into the database. Now I use that every once in a while when I forget a username that's built into the database or something like that. One time I did do migration of data from an old wiki server to a newer one I had built, so Workbench was required for extracting the data from the database and putting it in the new one. So maybe something you want to throw in there. I'm not going to go and do that this time. And go next. I'm going to change this configuration type to server computer. Keep with the defaults there. I'm going to change this password to, in this case, password, but in your production you may want to go with something a little bit more complicated, less weak. Add in a user. I'm going to name this wiki admin and make a database admin. Password is going to be the password. And it's pretty weak. Okay. And wiki admin. So remember all that, your password, because you will need it later on during the wiki setup. Go next. I'll keep with the defaults on that. And keep with the defaults there as well. And apply and execute. Alright, finished up. Next, and finish there as well. Now we get to install the wiki, and before going any further I'm going to get diffutils installed. So I just go open this, and really all I need is the bin extract. So I'm going to extract this to the downloads folder. Okay. And I'm going to grab the contents, or at least this content, copy it, and move over to Program Files x86. I'm going to create, if not already created, it probably isn't in your install, I had to redo this section of video, GNU Win32, and I'll just paste this here in GNU Win32, continue on. I should have diff3, that's a file I'm going to need later on in order to make some of the additional features in this wiki work. Now that we got that set up, we can go in and start working on the BlueSpice version of MediaWiki. So I'll go and open up this. I'm going to extract this folder to, I might as well put it under downloads, that's fine. Okay, I'm going to navigate to where I extracted everything. Get in there. Go back to where all these files actually exist. I'm going to highlight all of them, copy them, navigate over to my www root folder under inetpub. I'm going to paste them directly into there. Now, this is just a test environment, like I was talking about earlier. You may want to put the actual, default website on a different drive, but in this case I'm just going to put it straight in the default root directory. Now that that's completely copied over, I got to go in this extension folder and go to BlueSpice Foundation, and I'll be changing a couple of names. I'll be getting rid of this .template on the back end of config. And I'll be doing the same with data. Why it doesn't come like this, I don't know, but I'm sure they got their reasons. And I'm also going to look for go up to the www root, look for local settings, BlueSpice.php, and looks like it's already changed, so sometimes it may have that .template at the end of it, and you'd have to get rid of that as well. In addition, I'm going to update the permissions on some of these to allow the iUser to write to these directories. So go to cache, security, edit, and we're going to look for iUsers and allow modification there. And I believe I might be wrong here. This may be an extra step. I'm going to go ahead and select that computer, do iUser, okay, and do modify for that as well. Like I said, I'm not 100% sure if that's necessary. It might be grouped in that group we gave permissions to, but I'm going to do it anyway because I'm not 100% sure. Go to properties on images as well, because we want to be able to upload images, and that's where it's going to end up when we do upload the images. Edit here as well. iUsers is going to have modify. We're going to add in IUSR. Check that. Okay. And get them modify as well. Okay, and I'm also going to browse back to the extensions, BlueSpice Foundation, and config, and I'm going to do the same there for those permissions as well. Edit that. Scroll down. Let's go and give iUsers modify. Add in IUSR again. And hey, I don't even have to change the location. I just saved myself about 10 seconds worth of work. Apply, okay, and also want to do the same with data, properties, security. Alright, apply there, okay, forgot to add in iUser. It just became more efficient. Apply, okay. Alright, so all the configuration folders and stuff have the proper permissions. So now I should be able to go to Internet Explorer again. I'm going to go navigate to my fully qualified domain name, because it's going to use this in generating the local settings, and it's just going to be a mess later on if you don't use the fully qualified domain name of the server we're installing on. /mw-config/index.php. Alright, I very rarely have this installation go smooth, and this is another one of those times, so I need to troubleshoot and figure out why this session does not exist. So give me a couple minutes to do that. Okay, so after a little bit of troubleshooting, I realized what I did wrong in php.ini. There needs to be a space between program files and this little parentheses that I did not originally have, and that's for the upload temp directory as well as the session save path. So that's why that error occurred. So anyway, carrying on, we go with selecting what language we want to have. I'm going to stick with English. Get this expanded. And it looks like the GNU diff3 that we did before this installation is not found. So I'll have to troubleshoot that later on, but it hasn't kept the MediaWiki from working previously, so hopefully I'll find a resolution for that later on. But everything else looks like it's installed and worked correctly. We can continue on. I'm going to connect to the database. I'm going to stick with what it says to name that database. You can name it whatever you want, as long as it doesn't have spaces, I believe. I'm going to put in the password that I used to create this database, and I believe, use the wiki user service account. Wiki admin. Let me see if that works. Go next. And for the database settings, I'm just going to continue on. I'm going to name this whatever I want to name it, but I'll keep it test wiki. Define the wiki admin username for the one that's going to be built in. We're going to need to use this later, and it is going to be need to be a more complex password than just password. So this may be a good thing to write down. However, you will not use it too much in the future beyond this initial installation. Email address I'm going to keep blank because I don't really need it. Go to continue. I'm going to keep with the defaults for most of this. I'm going to disable the outbound emails, enable the file uploads, I'm good with that, and keep with the PHP object caching. Continue on, and continue. There's an error on the bottom of my screen that's been present since I've been doing this, and I'm not sure what it is, and it doesn't seem to be inhibiting anything just yet, but maybe when I get this file generated that we're going to generate in a minute, it'll go away. If not, I'll have to troubleshoot a little further. It wasn't there the past couple of installations I've done. So we'll save this local settings.php into our downloads folder. Open the folder, and I'm going to migrate it over to the www root eventually. And just paste it in there. Now back on my internet browser, I want to go and navigate over to my fully qualified domain name /installcheck.php, and hopefully everything comes up as okay. There was one error down here, and maybe that's the reason I'm getting that error. We can go back to PHP INI, or maybe it's good to keep that on during this initial setup, just show any errors that might come up. But we definitely want to disable that when we go to production. So we go to find, display, errors, and just to make it shut up, I'm going to turn it off, save it, and let's rerun this, and hopefully everything come up as green. I won't have any red on this page. Let me do an IIS reset. Reset it, and everything looks like it's good. Alright, now I'm going to install some additional features that don't come native with BlueSpice. One being the auth remote user, which allows me to carry over the Windows authentication to the wiki itself, so I can use sort of a single sign-on using a Windows authentication and domain authentication with the wiki itself. So I'm going to open up this tar.gz file, and I will need WinRare to open up this. I'm going to extract this to a specified folder, and just to cut out a couple different steps, I'll scroll on down to inetpub wroot, and I want to cram this into extensions. Okay. Let me make sure that came out right. There it is. It looks like it unpacked correctly. It should be right there, just like that. So now I need to start modifying that local settings INI file we generated earlier. So back to the tripdub root. Look for local settings.php and edit in Notepad++ or the text editor of your choice. And I'm going to scroll all the way to the bottom and append some stuff to the bottom just to further modify some things that weren't available in the wizard. So I'm pasting this in from the instructions that are in the description, or linked in the description. So I won't go over every little one. Copy that stuff in. And let me expand this out a little bit. Alright, so I'm defining with this where the temp directory is going to be. So it's going to be under basically my root cache. Same with the image path and the upload path, and also going to define some of the default permissions to disallow people to just randomly access it without any authentication. You may want to allow anonymous users in, but in my case, I want to make sure that I authenticate anybody being able to read my content. And these are going to load some additional extensions that we're going to utilize. Multimedia Viewer just brings up pictures in a window, makes it look really nice, and embed video allows you to actually watch videos within the wiki page without having to download it as, say, an MP4 that you may have displayed. Down here under authentication, that's actually going to carry over that Windows authentication when we go to enable that on IIS and allow us to use our same username for the wiki page itself. So I also want to get rid of the domain so it's not, Joshua R and tacticaltech.net in the wiki itself. It's just Joshua R. So I'm going to spell this correctly and change this domain to whatever is relevant to my environment, in this case Tactical Tech. That'll just do a quick search and replace of that before it becomes my username on the wiki. So go to save all that. And one thing I need to do before getting out of this file is go to the wg-diff3 setting and point that to where we installed the diff3.exe. And another thing I want to point out before exiting out of this, if you're missing just one semicolon out of this, and you save it, more than likely you're going to get a server 500 error when you go to open the page, just because PHP doesn't like you forgetting semicolons. So make sure that you have all this stuff closed out and all the parameters correct and there aren't any errors, otherwise you will get a 500 error for just one simple character being missing. And make sure to save it. Now I need to get my database updated for BlueSpice. It's going to add in a couple entries, I imagine, a couple of tables to support BlueSpice. So I run command prompt as an administrator, and I'm going to navigate over to the tripdub root. So just cd space c:/pub/www root. I'm in the w root, and being that I don't have php.exe linked to the path, I gotta type in the exact path to php.exe with the quotations around to make these spaces work out. Space maintenance / update.php. And I go ahead and execute this. Okay, like I said, none of this ever goes smoothly, so I forgot to download and install Multimedia Viewer extension. I thought it came with the BlueSpice, apparently it doesn't. So I go to the download page, I'll get 1.27 to match my version of BlueSpice, continue on, get it downloaded, eventually, any day now. Okay, open it up. And I'll just extract this like we did earlier with, or tried to do earlier with category root and authentication remote user. Alright, now go back and try to execute this one more time, and it'll probably give me another error. Now I've noticed, at least on my server, it gives me this CLI has stopped working thing every time I execute this for the first time, but I'll just go ahead and execute it again, and for some reason it completes successfully that second time around. And this will take a minute or two. And it says done, and looks like everything came out pretty good, aside from a couple tables that were already existing. So we'll go and exit out of this. Alright, the next bit of this, I'm going to make my domain user account wiki admin. So in order to do that, I got to enable Windows authentication, log in, and it'll create my basic user account for wiki that won't be an admin. Disable Windows authentication on IIS, log back in as the wiki admin, and make my basic user domain account into wiki admin, and then re-enable Windows authentication. So let's get started. Go to IIS Manager, look for the default website, go to authentication, and I'm going to disable anonymous authentication and enable Windows authentication. Now when I go back to this site, I'm going to get rid of this install check. Just go to the main URL, and if I get everything set up correctly in IIS, it should default over to index.php. And it logged me in already as Joshua R, so that's pretty convenient. Usually it'll come up with a pop-up depending on your domain settings, prompting you for your domain account username and password. But if you get the logon screen for the wiki itself, then there's probably something done wrong. So let me minimize that. Now that I got my user account on the wiki page, I'm going to re-enable anonymous authentication, disable Windows authentication, and let me see if I can just refresh this or if I need to restart the browser. Alright, this is what I'm looking for. Go to login. I'm going to use the wiki admin account I built during the setup, and the complicated password I used because it wouldn't allow me to use password. And go to this little sprocket over here for settings. I'm going to go down to user manager. I'm going to look for my domain account and hit this little people icon to edit groups, and I'm going to make myself an administrator, or that account administrator. Okay, and I can go and minimize this and disable sound like pork pig authentication, and re-enable Windows authentication. Go back here and see if we can just refresh, and if it'll log me in as, yep, that's me. Alright, so I need to do that for the next little step. One of the problems with BlueSpice that is at least known on Windows systems is when I go to edit this, go down here, and I'm going to insert a picture. Well, let me do it in a real browser. Internet Explorer doesn't like to work with this too often. So let me get this in Chrome. Alright, so it gives me these cool little tools, which is nice about BlueSpice. Another reason to go through all these links to install it. I'm going to upload and display a picture, or at least attempt to, and I'll show you the error that we're going to receive from doing this. Go to wiki editor. Eventually I'll show you this. Let me install the picture. Browse. Try to throw this monitor picture up there. Okay. And basically we get to well, it appears to be working in this, but I'm going to implement that fix anyway, just in case, because I know in previous installations this wasn't working for me, so surprised it works today. Just go okay. But generally, or the reason I do this next fix is sometimes when you go to upload a picture, the spinning wheel of progress spins forever and never actually completes the upload of the picture and never actually displays this. So I'm going to cancel out of this. Yep, leave. And I'm going to type in this navigation pane, title equal MediaWiki common.js. I definitely typed in something wrong there. At least I think I did. Alright, I see what I did. And I'm going to go to edit there and add in a little line to the bottom of this. Just mw.loader.using parentheses that parentheses semicolon. Save the page. And that's supposed to fix the problem that we weren't having this time around. So, alright, so if you're happy with this installation of BlueSpice and you're ready to go to production, you're pretty much done. This ends the default installation. If you want to cater it a little bit more towards your organization, change the way things look and the way things are laid out, well, stay tuned to this video and I'll show you how to do that. So, starting now, we're going to go back to my virtual machine, go to Notepad++, eventually, sometime today, preferably. Okay, go to File, Open. And I already got this path, but basically I'm going to go to the tripdub root extensions, BlueSpice Foundation, skins, or include skins, and BS based template, and open. And what I'm going to do with this portion is just add in some classification banners, because that's what my organization happens to use on just about every web page we have. So I'm going to navigate to a little section of this code. This is where it gets a little bit complicated, and the reason I do these videos. So I'd go to find, and I'm looking for if parentheses this data BS navigation, just get me there quick. Now it's a little bit different depending on the installation of BlueSpice you have. On this case it's line 646, and right under this code block, this is a code block, an if code block, I'm going to press enter and insert a little bit more code to append classification to the header. And I want to make sure that it's right before this aout/div paste. And I'll get this formatted so it looks pretty decent. And I'll get this on its own line. And I want to make sure that, again, it has this last division to match up with this one, and this division end divider, or whatever that's called in HTML language, to match up with this one. If I don't have those two down here, I learned the hard way that it screws up all the formatting. So I'm also going to put a classification banner, or before I move on, you can actually change this classification to whatever matches wherever you're installing, as well as the color. And you can even make this message here read something else, just up to you. I'm also going to put something at the footer with the classification message and everything else as well. So I'm going to search for if count a footer icons, and yeah, find next. And in between this little code block, or right after this code block and before the clear both line, just press enter. I'll grab my wiki footer text, and insert it there. Get a little bit cleaned up here. And again, you can change classification and the message if you so desire, along with the classification text color. Now I'll go save, and just hopefully everything looks correct when I go to refresh this page. And as you can clearly see, we got the unclassified message up top and another one down at the bottom. Now, just to reflect my unit, I want to go ahead and put and there's a couple different ways to do this. The way I like to do it is put a little icon reflecting the unit in the top left corner of the page. And the way I'm going to use it is it'll be a background image that scrolls down along with the page. I'll show you what that looks like after we're done. So in order to do that, I'm going to need a PNG file that is approximately 300 pixels by 300 pixels, and the background of the PNG should be transparent. So I already got one created here. I'll just copy it to, it's going to be under the trip dub, looking for skins, BlueSpice skin, resources, images, and desktop. I'll just drop it in there. And while I'm here, just so I'm not going to keep typing stuff, just copy the name. And I also want to make sure that the name doesn't have any spaces. It just, it's tacky for HTML, I guess, and should work out. But alright, now I'm going to navigate up to resources. I'm going to open up screen.layout.less with Notepad. I'm going to search for the background URL. And there it is right there up top. And I'm just going to change this from bglow.png to whatever I named it, .png. And that's why I had to drill down into it so deep to get it to this level. So another thing I want to change while I'm here is I'm going to change the center portion to left, so it's hanging out on the left side of the window instead of dead center. And right underneath, I'm going to insert a new line called background tag attachment. Colon, space, fixed, semicolon. And that's going to fix it into the corner. I'll show you in a minute here. So let's pop back over here. Do a forced refresh. Forced refresh is Control F5 or Control refresh button. And there's our icon right there. And if we were able to scroll on this page, you'd see it sticks right there in the corner. But I can't scroll on this page because it's not big enough. Now you'll notice when I go to resize this that the navigation pane is overlapping, and I really don't want to have that happen. Hey, that's what I was talking about. You get a little bit of scroll work in there. Navigation pane down a little bit more by default so you can see that logo. Make it look a little bit sharper. So in that same text file we were working in, screen layout.less, I'm going to look for bs-nav-sections. I'm going to change the top of this to be 300 pixels, or negative 308. Probably round up and go to 10. And I'm going to also push it over a little bit to the left by 10 pixels. Actually, I will push it over to the right, but let's see how that affects this. I do Control refresh. And you see the 10 pixels right here off to the left, and you see it got pushed down a little bit. Now that icon is not the right size. I'll have to change that and adjust it 300 pixels later on. I think it's still at 270 because it's an older file. Now I want to get rid of this BlueSpice logo here, blocking my logo, and do a couple other things under the preferences. So I go to this little sprocket here, scroll on down to preferences. If you don't see it for whatever reason, maybe your administrative privileges haven't taken effect, or at least on this navigation page, just go to special pages and then BlueSpice preferences, and you'll scroll on down to where BlueSpice section is, and we're going to get rid of this entire path here and just leave it blank, and that will get rid of that logo in the top corner. While I'm here, I might as well add in MP4 so I can upload MP4s. Okay, and I'll also, if I have a fave icon, which is this icon here for the website, I can go ahead and upload it to the extensions, BlueSpice, resources, whatever path, and add it in at the end, but I don't have that prepped at the moment, but you can change that path to it. But I'll scroll on down, and I don't really like the what you see is what you get editor, just some big nerd like that, so I'm gonna disable that by default. It'll still be there, show you in a minute. Main page, and you notice that icon is gone, and it defaults me over to the wiki editing page, and I can still go back to the what you see is what you get page as well. Well, at least if you have the proper browser, that is. Flip back and forth that way. So next thing I want to do, you notice when I go full screen with this on a 1080 monitor, this little column with all the content in it stays pretty slim. I'd like it to expand out so I can see a little bit more of that content in there. So in order to do that, I got to go back to my notepad editor, and we're going to go open up another one of these .less files. So I'm actually going to go up to the BlueSpice skin directory and looking for skin.json. Open that up. I'm looking for BS width page, and I'm going to change this variable to auto in between the quotes. Go to save that and force a refresh, Control F5 on this page, and it expands on out. Now I still want to make use of this column or this little space over here. I probably want to keep it a little bit away from that scroll bar by about, I'm going to do 30 pixels. So I need to work on a different section there. Leave it's under screen layout .less, and it's BS applications or something like that. So just search for BS app. And there it is. Now this padding, I'm going to just be top 0 pixels. The right's going to have 30 pixels, and everything else is going to be 0 pixels, 0 pixels, and that's it. And I'm also going to get rid of this left, this float left, because that's going to, float left is actually what's preventing it from expanding on out. I'm not exactly sure why, so let me just get rid of this whole line. And go to save and do force refresh again on this. And there it expands out and has a little bit of space here just to make it look aesthetically pleasing. Now speaking of aesthetics, I want to resize that tactical tech icon there, and I got a tool installed called Image Resizer Power Toy. So I'm just gonna click that. You probably don't got this, but it's a really good tool to download. I'm just going to custom fit it to 300 by 300. Resize it. Should be overriding that photo or that image. I'm going to do force refresh here, see if it actually worked. And there we go. We got full moon, and it's right down the center, right where I need it to be. Now, before wrapping this video up, I want to point out that in your production environment, depending on what kind of group policies you have, these little icons here, and even some of these icons up here in the corner and all these little icons here may not be displayed because these are actually fonts. They're associated with a font currently on the wiki server. And if you have a group policy set to not trust internet-based fonts, you aren't going to see any of these icons unless you got the font installed on the computer, which more than likely none of your clients do have. Now, you'll be able to see them probably in Firefox, Chrome, but Internet Explorer adheres to that group policy. So what I had to do in my production environment, because this does affect me in production, is go through and get the related icon files or picture files. I think they were PNGs with these, put them all under the image folder, and go through and find where each one of these icons was. Swap out the text for it with the actual PNG file associated with that icon. It was it's miserable, and I'm still only about 75% way through, so I got a couple users who don't see where the icons are. But just want to point that out. If they're missing, that's more than likely why. Group policy issue and some with your environment. So that sums up this installation. I might make a video later on about how to actually do wiki, but I'm sure there's some videos out there already on that, so I'm not really too concerned with it. But hope that worked out for you. If not, good luck. Have a nice day.